Archaeologists clearing rubble from an ancient cemetery in Egypt found a layer of linen buried beneath the sand. At first, the bundles appeared small. Some were narrow, others were shaped around tiny heads and folded bodies. As the excavation continued, one bundle became 10, then 20, then more than 30. Inside them were cats. Some were domestic cats, similar to those living in homes today. Others appeared to be wild cats. Each animal had been wrapped in linen, tied with strips of fabric, and buried together beneath Luxor's western cliffs. The cats dated to the Ptolemaic period, when Greek kings ruled Egypt more than 2,000 years ago. But they were only one part of the discovery. Nearby, archaeologists opened a burial shaft containing 10 painted wooden coffins from several different periods of Egyptian history. They also uncovered the tomb of a priest whose name had never appeared in any known historical record. The site had preserved people, animals, religious titles, and forgotten names across more than 1,000 years. All of it had remained hidden beneath debris left behind by archaeologists more than a century ago. The discovery was made at Drara Abu El-Naga, part of the enormous Theban necropolis on the west bank of the Nile. Across the river stood ancient Thebes, the city now known as Luxor. During the New Kingdom, Thebes became one of the richest and most powerful cities on earth. Its eastern bank contained the temples of Karnak and Luxor. Its western bank belonged to the dead. Kings were buried in the Valley of the Kings. Queens, princes, officials, priests, scribes, craftspeople, and their families were buried across the surrounding hills. Drara Abu El-Naga formed one of the oldest sections of this sacred landscape. If discoveries that bring forgotten people and rituals back from beneath the earth are why you are here, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the 30 cats were not buried beside one ordinary family. They were placed inside a cemetery used and reused for centuries by people connected to the most powerful temple in Egypt. The latest excavation began in an area near the tomb, known as TT255, which belonged to a man named Roy. A thick mound of debris covered the ground nearby. The rubble had been left by earlier archaeological work and had prevented researchers from properly examining the area for more than 150 years. Removing it was slow. Every layer could contain pottery, bones, fragments of painted plaster, or the entrance to another burial. When the debris finally came away, the ground beneath it revealed several discoveries at once. In the courtyard of a tomb belonging to a man named Baki, archaeologists found a shaft cut down into the rock. Inside were 10 painted wooden coffins. They had not all been made at the same time. 4 appear to date to the 18th dynasty, the age of rulers such as Hatshepsut, Akhenaten, and Tutankhamun. 1 belonged to a woman named Merit. The inscriptions identify her as a chantress of Amun. Another coffin was made during the Ramesside period and belonged to a priest named Padi Amun. The remaining coffins came from Egypt's late period, many centuries after the oldest burials at the site. This mixture created an immediate question. Why were coffins from different centuries placed inside the same shaft? Archaeologists believe the space was reused as a cache. The coffins may have been removed from their original tombs after the bodies inside had been damaged or threatened. They were then gathered together and placed somewhere considered safer. This happened elsewhere in the Theban necropolis. Ancient tomb robbers entered burial chambers, searching for gold, jewelry, valuable oils, and anything that could be sold or reused. Priests and officials sometimes responded by moving the dead. A coffin could be carried out of a damaged tomb, repaired, relabeled, or placed inside another hidden chamber. Even royal mummies were moved in this way. The famous royal caches near Deir el-Bahari preserved the bodies of pharaohs because priests transferred them from tombs that were no longer secure. The 10 coffins at Drara Abu El-Naga may record a similar attempt to protect the dead. But they also show that a tomb was not always used once and forgotten. Ancient cemeteries were living landscapes. Families returned to them. Priests performed ceremonies. new shafts were opened beside older chambers. Later generations placed their dead among ancestors who had been buried hundreds of years earlier. The coffins preserved that long history in wood and paint. Their surfaces were covered with divine figures, protective symbols, offering scenes, and lines of hieroglyphs. The decoration was not simply intended to make the coffin beautiful. Every image had a purpose. Eyes allowed the deceased to look outward. Protective gods guarded the body. Spells helped the dead breathe, move, eat, speak, and pass through the dangers of the next world. A painted coffin created a small sacred universe around the mummy inside. The name was especially important. Ancient Egyptians believed that preserving a person's name helped preserve their identity. To erase the name was to threaten that person's continued existence. To speak it again was to restore part of them. That is why the discovery of another tomb nearby became so important. Its owner was a purification priest named Archaeologists. Before this excavation, researchers had no known record of him. His tomb included a small courtyard, a rectangular shaft, an offering chamber decorated with funerary texts, and a burial chamber deeper inside. The inscriptions did more than identify the priest. They also named members of his family. His father, Amun, held a similar religious position. Two women, named Isis and Taka Kaft, were described as chantresses, connected to the Temple of Amun. The tomb therefore preserves part of a religious family. One generation served the temple and passed that connection to the next. Purification priests played an essential role in Egyptian ritual. Before sacred ceremonies, priests had to prepare themselves and the objects around them. Purification could involve washing, shaving body hair, wearing clean linen, burning incense, and following rules about food and behavior. Inside the temple, the god's statue was treated as a living divine presence. It was awakened, washed, clothed, perfumed, offered food, and addressed through prayers. Only properly prepared priests could approach the most sacred spaces. Archaeologists may have performed these rituals within the enormous Temple of Amun at Karnak. His wives may have joined processions and ceremonies through music and chanting. Their voices helped transform ritual into an experience of movement, rhythm, and sound. The family was unknown to history until archaeologists removed the rubble covering their tomb. But the strangest discovery waited in the lower layers south of Baki's courtyard. There, excavators found more than 30 mummified cats. The animals were wrapped individually in linen and secured with fabric bands. They came in different sizes and included both wild and domestic cats. Researchers date the deposit to the Ptolemaic period, between the 4th and 1st centuries before Christ. By then, the oldest coffins at the site were already more than 1,000 years old. The tombs of New Kingdom officials had become ancient monuments in their own right, yet people continued returning to the cemetery. The cats show that the meaning of the area changed, while its sacred importance remained. Animal mummification became an enormous religious practice during the later centuries of ancient Egypt. Cats, dogs, ibises, falcons, crocodiles, snakes, fish, beetles, and other creatures were preserved in vast numbers. Different animals were connected with different gods. A falcon could be associated with Horus. An ibis could represent Thoth. A crocodile could be connected with Sobek. Cats were strongly linked with Bastet. Bastet had not always appeared as a domestic cat. In earlier periods, she was often shown as a lioness or a woman with the head of a lioness. She represented dangerous power, protection, motherhood, fertility, and the defense of the home. Over time, her image became gentler. She was increasingly shown with the head of a domestic cat, sometimes carrying kittens or a musical instrument. This did not mean that Egyptians believed every house cat was a god in the simple modern sense. Animals could represent divine qualities. A cat's ability to kill snakes and rodents made it a natural symbol of protection. Its careful behavior toward its young connected it with motherhood. Its calm appearance could change instantly into violence when threatened. That combination reflected the power of a goddess who could nurture and destroy. Many cat mummies were votive offerings. A worshipper could obtain a prepared animal mummy and dedicate it to Bastet or another protective deity. The offering acted like a permanent prayer. It might ask for healing, fertility, protection, forgiveness, or help with a personal problem. After the ceremony, priests collected the bundles and buried them in sacred deposits. Some cat cemeteries eventually contained thousands or even hundreds of thousands of animals. This required an organized system. Cats had to be raised or captured. Food had to be supplied. Bodies had to be prepared. Linen, oils, resins, workers, priests, and burial space were all needed. Animal mummification was not a small side practice. It became part of a religious economy connecting temples, workshops, farms, pilgrims, and merchants. The newly discovered cats may have belonged to that system. Officials believe they were religious offerings, probably connected with divine protection, but their exact story is not yet known. Archaeologists do not know who brought them. They do not know whether all 30 were buried during one ceremony or accumulated over time. They do not know whether they came from a nearby shrine or were moved from another location. The identification of wild and domestic cats is also preliminary and will need further scientific study. Modern imaging may eventually reveal what is inside each linen bundle without physically opening it. X-rays and CT scans can show whether a mummy contains a complete animal, part of an animal, several mixed bones, or only packing material. Studies of other Egyptian animal mummies have produced surprising results. Some beautifully wrapped bundles contain complete bodies. Others hold only a skull, a few bones, feathers, or fragments. A small number contain no animal remains at all. That does not automatically mean the offerings were fraudulent. In some cases, a fragment may have been considered powerful enough to represent the whole creature. In others, the external form and ritual dedication may have mattered more than what was inside. But there is also evidence that demand became so great that workshops produced offerings quickly and cheaply. Many cats used for votive mummies were young. Some appear to have been deliberately killed so they could become offerings. This creates an uncomfortable contrast. The same culture that treated cats as symbols of divine protection also bred and sacrificed them in enormous numbers. To modern viewers, that can look like cruelty disguised as worship. To ancient worshippers, sacrificing the animal transformed it into a messenger capable of reaching the divine world. The act was understood through a completely different religious system. The 30 cats at Dra Abu El-Naga may help researchers study how that system operated in Thebes. Most famous cat cemeteries are associated with places such as Bubastis, Saqqara, and Beni Hassan. Finding a grouped deposit at this Theban necropolis raises questions about the local rituals that produced it. Was there a nearby sanctuary connected with Bastet? Were the cats dedicated to a different protective goddess? Were they placed near human tombs to guard the dead? Or was an older cemetery simply used as convenient sacred ground for offerings? The current evidence does not provide a final answer. The discovery also included a decorated sandstone pyramidion belonging to a scribe and nobleman named Benji. A pyramidion formed the pointed top of a small mud brick tomb pyramid. Its carved scenes showed the owner worshipping the gods. Benji's original tomb has not yet been located. The pyramidion may have fallen or been moved from somewhere nearby. That means another burial could still be hidden beneath the surrounding ground. This is where the dramatic version of the discovery needs to slow down. Archaeologists did not find 30 beloved pets buried beside one mysterious owner. The cats and human coffins date to different periods. They were probably not placed in the ground during the same event. There is no evidence of a curse, a secret cat queen, or a chamber belonging to the goddess Bastet. The site is remarkable because generations used the same sacred landscape in different ways. An 18th dynasty chantress was buried in a painted coffin. A Ramesside priest followed centuries later. Late-period coffins were moved into the same cache. A purification priest and his religious family built another tomb nearby. Then, during the Ptolemaic period, more than 30 cats were wrapped and buried in the lower layers of the cemetery. Each discovery belongs to a different chapter. Together, they turn one small area into a timeline covering more than 1,000 years. The excavation is not finished. Conservators must stabilize the coffins before the wood and paint deteriorate. Specialists will study the hieroglyphs, pigments, linen, bones, and embalming materials. Imaging may reveal the ages and species of the cats. The inscriptions may connect unknown priests with other families at Karnak. Further digging may locate the missing tomb of Benji. The most valuable discoveries may not be gold. They may be names. Merit, Padi Amun, Arshafi Naktu, Isis, Takaft, Benji, people whose families once expected their memories to survive forever, but whose identities disappeared beneath rubble. The cats do not preserve names. They preserve an act. Someone obtained each animal. Someone prepared the body. Someone wrapped the linen. Someone tied the final strip. And someone carried the bundle into the cemetery and placed it among the dead. For more than 2,000 years, those offerings remained in darkness. The temples fell silent. The priests disappeared. The meaning of the ceremony was forgotten. Then archaeologists cleared a layer of debris that had covered the ground for 150 years. Beneath it, the painted faces of the coffins returned. A forgotten priest recovered his name, and more than 30 cats, wrapped for the gods of ancient Egypt, came back into the light. The next investigation is waiting on screen now.